Hello everyone, welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we're going to hear a thrilling and humorous story from the storyteller's experience while using an electric wheelchair in a supermarket. An unreasonable woman tried to take over his wheelchair, claiming he didn't need it because she's older and more disabled than him. Today's story will take you through an unexpected situation. Not only did I disagree, but I also reacted strongly, creating a humorous chase in the supermarket. The fact that she could only move so slowly with her scooter, while I swiftly sped away on my electric wheelchair, made the whole situation even more unbelievable and funny. If you find this story interesting and full of meaningful lessons, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more valuable lessons. A woman in the supermarket tried to push me out of my wheelchair and take it from me. So here I am, a 39-year-old man, standing in a Shaw's store in a peaceful rural area. For those who are unfamiliar with Shaw's, a popular supermarket chain in certain areas, it may seem a little vague. But for me, this place is an essential part of my daily life. Shaw's is not just an ordinary supermarket. It has its own club that they proudly advertise, promising to offer cheaper products. However, those with a keen eye will notice this is a clever way to hide the price markup. If you drive a few more miles to another supermarket, you'll find that everything there is cheaper than what Shaw's is selling. So why am I here? The reason is quite simple: there are things I can only find at Shaw's. My favorite caffeine, the thing that keeps me awake every morning, is exactly why I have to come here. Like the special caffeine I drink every day, as an essential part of my life. For me, finding this item is like discovering a magic potion, giving me energy and focus. And not to forget, my dog's food, nutritious meals they need, irreplaceable by any other product. So, despite knowing that the prices here aren't as reasonable as advertised, I still have to come back to this supermarket. Every time I visit, I wonder if I'm falling victim to their pricing strategy. But without these items, I wouldn't be able to continue my normal life, just like a car can't run without oil. That's why, even though I'm a little frustrated with the higher prices compared to other places, I have to endure and continue my journey in this supermarket. I am sitting in my electric wheelchair, an essential part of my daily life. For me, this wheelchair is not just a means of transportation, but like a companion, helping me maintain a sense of freedom in my life. At that moment, I had to use it almost all the time because my health condition didn't allow me to do otherwise. My wheelchair is an Eagle HD, a foldable electric wheelchair, extremely convenient and durable. When I sit on it, I feel the stability and comfort it brings, allowing me to move easily, whether in a crowded supermarket or on the rough roads of the countryside. At that time, I was facing significant health challenges. The aftereffects of COVID had severely impacted my body, making me feel tired and sluggish almost every day. After surviving the pandemic, I realized my body was no longer the same. I became less active, and it seemed every step I took required great effort, with the joint pain that had been lingering for a while now becoming an inseparable part of my life. Simply moving from one place to another became a significant challenge for me, and this wheelchair was my only lifeline. Not just walking, but even simple things like climbing stairs or standing up became major challenges for me. The feeling of my body not obeying me, the weakness in every movement, all created a chain of loss and pain. This not only affected my body but also my spirit. Although there were times I felt like giving up, this wheelchair was always the only thing that gave me a sense of control, as if it was helping me overcome limits I couldn't conquer on my own. Sometimes, I think back to the days when I was healthy, could walk, run, and didn't need to depend on anyone or any assistive devices. But now, facing these persistent health problems, I've learned to live with my limitations, and this wheelchair has become a symbol of perseverance and hope. Every time I sit in it, I feel like I haven't completely lost my freedom. I can still go to the places I want, meet the people I love, even with the help of technology. So here I am, leaning forward to grab a can of Monster, my favorite drink, and trying to place it under my seat on the wheelchair. In that moment, everything seemed normal, like any other day, as I struggled to move through a crowded supermarket, searching for the things I needed. But suddenly, a strong push from behind caught me off guard. I felt the hand of a woman, a forceful push, pressing into my back as I bent down. The sensation startled me, and in that instant, the question flashed through my mind, did I do something wrong? She said, in a cold and impatient voice, I need that, you don't need it, you're younger. That blunt, entitled statement froze me for a moment. No one likes to be treated like that, especially when you're already struggling with your own health issues and are invaded by the space of a rude stranger. I felt a rush of frustration, but luckily, I had fastened my seatbelt before the push happened. This not only helped me stay steady but also prevented a worse situation if I had tipped over. I realized that without the seatbelt, I might have fallen out of my wheelchair immediately, and that would certainly not have been pleasant. At that moment, I saw how important the wheelchair is, not just as a transportation tool but as a part of my protection against unexpected accidents. I was lucky I had fastened my seatbelt, as I normally don't do that, since I have a habit of removing it when I want to pick up heavier items. But this time, because of my old habit, I did the right thing, which helped me avoid a situation that could have led to an accident. However, the feeling of being invaded like that was not comfortable at all, and I began to feel a frustration that words can't express. Although she didn't understand my situation, I still felt a great sense of reproach for her disrespectful behavior. How could she think that she had the right to decide whether I needed that item or not? Especially when I was not only struggling with my mobility but also facing many other challenges caused by my health. The feeling of being disregarded by a stranger who had no concern for my circumstances made me feel a simmering anger, like sharp thorns piercing my heart. When I felt her hand push firmly against my back, I couldn't sit still any longer. I immediately sat up straight, feeling my anger boil within me. Both frustration and surprise rushed through me in a moment, and I forcefully pushed her hand away from my body. The sensation was like an abrupt shock, like being violated in my personal space, which I had fought so hard to protect. My voice rang out, unable to hold back my emotions. What the hell is this? I felt the lump in my throat with that question, an utter frustration from not being able to understand her actions. She wasn't at all flustered by my reaction, continuing to shake my chair, an electric wheelchair, the device I relied on daily to help me move and maintain my independence. Her attitude was as if she were shaking a regular dining chair, with no respect or understanding of how important this wheelchair was to me. She said, "You can use a wheelchair, this chair is better, I'm old," and pointed at the shabby supermarket chair she was using. Her words only made me more confused and angry. What she said not only showed a lack of respect but also a serious misunderstanding of my situation. She thought that age or getting older might be a valid reason to take away a mobility aid that was only meant for those who need it. I looked at her for a moment, unable to believe what I had just heard. In that instant, a feeling like being touched by my own pain surged. She had no idea about my health condition, about the struggles I faced every day. How could she say that this chair was better when she didn't understand that it wasn't just an object, but an essential part of my life? I stared at her, my astonishment evident, and then I calmly said, "This is my wheelchair. Stay away from me." Those words were not just a reaction but an assertion of my rights. I wasn't just telling her to stop, I was asserting that I had the right to use my wheelchair without further explanation. The feeling was indescribable, the anger, frustration, and the deep sense of being offended. No one could understand the struggles I was facing, but clearly, she hadn't stopped to think about it. The absurdity of her actions and words made me feel like I was standing before an unmovable wall, where all reason seemed meaningless. Sometimes, situations like this don't just make you angry, they also test your patience and your respect for other people's privacy. She continued to repeat her words as if she was completely right, with no hesitation. "You can't use personal items in the supermarket. Give me the chair." Every word she said was forcefully emphasized, and with each sentence, she shook my chair as if I were sitting in an ordinary dining chair, not realizing that this wasn't just a chair, but an essential part of my life. Her words were like daggers in my heart, and I felt the anger rising. She didn't understand anything about my situation, the helplessness I faced every day, the pain and struggles that the wheelchair helped me overcome. She had no idea that this wheelchair was the only means that allowed me to maintain my independence, and to her, it was just an object that could be casually taken away. With every forceful shake of the chair, I felt more disrespected and violated. I couldn't let her continue acting like this without reacting. I knew that if I didn't do something, this situation could go on, and it could escalate. So, I had no choice but to accelerate as fast as I could in my electric wheelchair. The feeling of speed surging forward was like a shock, making me feel freer and more comfortable than ever before. The feeling of complete control, as I took charge of my chair and separated myself from her invasion, was both liberating and triumphant. And then I sped away. The distance between me and her seemed endless. I yanked the chair away from her hands, moving so quickly that she couldn't react in time. As I did that, a part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, knowing that she wasn't steady and clearly needed a wheelchair herself. However, in that moment, the only choice was to act to protect my own rights. The feeling of not being held back, of not having to yield to someone else's invasion, was something I had to do to maintain my self-respect. It was not an easy decision. In that moment, I was not only facing a woman invading my space but also confronting my own fear and deep hurt inside. But I knew that if I didn't act, I might have to endure this violation forever, and no one had the right to decide this for me except myself. That's when I realized that sometimes resistance is necessary, not only to protect yourself from physical invasion but also to protect your autonomy, your right to live with respect and not be imposed upon. As I sped away, I didn't think about how she would react. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, but in that moment, I couldn't hesitate. I only knew that I had to keep my chair, and that was the only thing that mattered. It wasn't selfishness, but rather asserting my right to use my personal belongings, a right that anyone, young or old, should respect. And then, what I never thought would happen started, the most ridiculous chase I had ever experienced. Everything unfolded so quickly, yet it gave me a feeling of both confusion and disbelief. The most absurd part was that I was racing against a slow supermarket wheelchair, something I knew couldn't possibly catch up to my electric wheelchair. The supermarket chair was designed to assist those who couldn't walk, but it was so poor in speed that it could barely overtake anyone moving. And there I was, using my electric wheelchair, participating in an unfair race. The feeling at that moment was strange. I saw the supermarket wheelchair trailing behind me, like a turtle trying to catch up with a swift rabbit. I never imagined I'd be racing someone in this kind of situation, but reality created an unbelievable scenario. My movements were light and quick, while she seemed oddly slow, like a shadow trying to catch up with a flying vehicle. With a rush, I zoomed past the service counter, cutting across the aisles in an unbelievable manner. It felt like I was in an action movie, where I was the protagonist escaping from someone infringing on my rights. However, in reality, this was just happening in a regular supermarket, where everything seemed as bad as it could get. As I approached the service counter, I quickly spoke out, feeling the need to explain to those waiting in line, "Sorry, I really apologize, but there's a woman following me trying to push me out of my chair and take it." The anxiety was clear in my voice, as I didn't want to attract attention or make others uncomfortable, but the situation had gotten unbearable. I felt I had to protect my wheelchair and my self-respect. And as I was speaking, from behind me, her shouting voice rang out again. "Give it back." Her voice cracked, full of anger, but at the same time revealing desperation and weakness. These words only added fuel to the fire, forcing me to accelerate even more. The sounds merged with the faint and slow whine of the supermarket wheelchair, as if reflecting the speed of the woman desperately trying to catch up with me. I glanced back and saw her like a ghost, gradually fading from view, left behind in this unequal chase. As I increased speed, I couldn't help but feel a bit of humor in the situation. People around me began to notice what was happening and looked at me with surprised expressions. I wondered if they thought I was participating in some kind of joke, a joke I had no intention of being part of, but couldn't stop laughing inside. A slow, purposeless chase, yet it was happening right in this supermarket, a place I never thought would become the setting for such an unforgettable confrontation. At that moment, I was truly angry at the woman's behavior. She not only showed disrespect but also seemed so determined, as if she had the right to decide everything around her, regardless of the reality. That attitude made me feel deeply insulted, because not only was she trying to take my wheelchair, but she was also ordering me around as though I had no right to use it. It frustrated and stressed me, especially when my only goal at that time was to grab some dog food and leave the supermarket peacefully. I just wanted to get out of this situation as fast as possible. But surprisingly, when I looked at it from another angle, I found it rather funny. The contradiction between my anger and the bizarre situation was something I still can't forget. When she neared the small office area in the back, everyone started to look. There was a sense of tension, as if the situation was getting out of control, and I could feel the attention of those around me. I, along with those in line, stood frozen, all eyes on her as she passed. Time seemed to stop in that moment, and I could only watch her as she struggled to maintain her chase in this absurd situation. The more I watched, the more I realized that the supermarket wheelchair was not a reasonable mode of transportation, and the fact that she was using it made the situation even more comical. It was a chase, but one so slow it was almost unbelievable. It took her about 20 seconds to travel from one end of the supermarket to the other, and everyone around could only stand there watching, as if they were witnessing something beyond their control. Watching her move, I couldn't help but smile, even though I hadn't imagined this situation would become so absurd. Every step she took seemed like an exhausting effort, no different from a broken-down vehicle trying to roll forward. Her face was flushed, her glasses hanging from one ear, creating an image I could never forget. This slowness seemed to highlight my impatience with her actions. Finally, when she reached the service counter, the truth came to light. The staff calmly explained that the wheelchair was not the supermarket's property and that if she attempted to take something from another customer, they would have to call the police. This not only clarified ownership but also sent a message about respect and the proper use of other people's belongings. However, she reacted by shouting at the staff, insisting she knew the rules about not bringing personal items into the supermarket and accusing them of lying. I wondered if she truly understood that she was in the wrong, or if she simply couldn't accept the truth. But then, something unexpected happened. Perhaps she realized that everyone around her was looking at her with unkind eyes. Their gazes weren't sympathetic, but rather filled with annoyance and criticism. It was as if everyone had recognized the absurdity of her actions. A heavy silence filled the air, and in the end, she hesitantly asked about artichokes, perhaps as a way to diffuse the situation or simply to escape the overwhelming attention. I couldn't help but smile at her silly question, and the staff just silently replied in a tired manner. She quietly left, as though there was nothing more to say. Since then, I haven't been able to stop thinking about the absurdity of her actions. Part of me felt sorry for her, because maybe she was just following what her husband had said, as if they shouldn't buy something like mine because it's not allowed in the supermarket. With that thought, I realized that the absurdity didn't come from her, but possibly from a misguided belief or advice from someone else. Anyway, I hope she realized the ignorance in her actions and will find a more suitable wheelchair for herself, perhaps the Eagle HD that I'm using.